Hey, good morning. It's Radiate Life with Lorelei, and I'm Lorelei, and I'm still setting up my setup here. So I have a different computer. Hope the quality is okay. Got my screen set up, and I said I would go live today. I posted on my Facebook page and groups, and my hat today says, "I am a unicorn. Trust me. I am a unicorn. Trust me." And I'm wearing my commitment to wearing my pride shirts every day. So I have my yin yang earrings on. I have my trans bracelets on. I love my rainbow bracelet. I have my tags on. Love my LGBTQ kids. My simple pride shirt today. So I just wanted to say hello, and we'll see who comes on today. But I definitely, like I said, I'm going to have to play around a little bit, but I really want to get into it today. So I will not just, I don't know, is that better? All right, we'll try this. Try this for a bit. I look headless if I don't otherwise, right? And I'm in my basement. So here's the drop ceiling, and and I'm behind the scenes, right? So I'm by the stairs, so kiddos might come down, but everyone's on break. It's hard to tell. Everyone's kind of home. My little thing here is falling right there, so I have to kind of angle it here. My trees in the background, I love that. So yeah. So this is kind of an impromptu as far as what exactly I'm going to talk about. But today I guarantee you that I'm going to talk about dreams and the dreamer and my background. And my background is really about my passion and where it led me, and how I'm in a completely different place today with that and trying something new-ish. We're like flipping the script. We're doing something new. We're putting away all the books, and we're learning how to really listen to ourselves and give our own self-guidance. 2025 for me is not only personally, but I want to say professionally, and certainly with the individuals that live in my house. It's a time of preparing for launching themselves. It's preparing to say, who am I and what do I stand for? What am I willing to do? And taking that mirror back to ourselves and saying, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing or what anyone else says that I should do. What is it that I'm choosing to do? And how am I going to take my stand? So there's that. There's a little bit about how I went down the rabbit hole of dreams and how that took me into a high control, deceitful, cultish group for 7 years until I literally scared to death. I wouldn't even call it bravery. I wouldn't call it courage. I would call it was fear, but it was like, I knew that I had to get out of whatever that I was in. I had no help from my family because I'd already, through this cultish type behavior, just, alienated them. I had no money because I was convinced to work a little bit and gave my money to support a spiritual center that I was made to feel guilty about. And I do take responsibility. And at the same time, I have to realize who I was, where I was, that I was a very capable person before I ever came into this. So there's a little bit about that might mesh up with being raised by a narcissist in a narcissistic environment, high control. I'm going to say narcissistic patterns rather than the person. So you still have these high control patterns, and not, we wouldn't want to label somebody as a narcissist, per se. So that's this video. Okay. So this video, I also may get into some other things that come up, such as, due to this, I was able to do what I needed to do. I was able to set all that other stuff aside, and I was able to say, I have to do what I need to do. I'm a very committed person. I'm a hard worker, and I've hidden it my whole life, because being a hard worker and really doing things that were going to be beneficial for me were not things that were accoladed upon. I lived in an environment where squeaky wheel gets the grease, and a lot of codependent tendencies. And I was the one who was always out. I was the one doing the things I needed to do. And I really learned quickly on that I did them for me. I didn't do them for them. I didn't do them for anyone else. I was in an environment where they weren't going to. There is another generation of my own family that has a completely skewed view of who I am and what I did. And part of that is because there isn't honesty to be able to say it, because in this high control group that I was in, like there still wasn't, I'm going to say two parts of it. There was some of it was that self-honesty is one thing, like self-honesty, so that I can be in an environment that I don't feel safe. And an honest thing to me could be like, all right, I have to make an excuse to get out of here. Or maybe I don't, but this is what I feel like I choose to do in order to be able to keep myself safe, because otherwise people are going to try to talk me into something different. If I'm in an environment where people need to have me there because they need my attention, they need that energy from me, they may talk to me to stay into that into that environment, right? So you have to do what's going to be best for you. Second of all, there is this year it's really about healing. I mean, a big part of why we're here together and a big part of the groups that I've been involved in recently is because obviously when I'm sure you're watching this, you're like me, or you know people that are like me, or this has happened, or you have a friend this has happened to, whether it's being SA'd, and you know what SA is, being hurt, manipulated mentally, emotionally, physically. And, they say mental abuse is the worst kind of abuse because it doesn't leave scars on the body, it leaves scars on your psyche, right? And if you still are in, mostly it happens from our family of origin, or a family that, a group of individuals that have been our family. So you can act like a kind of, I say loosely family, but a manipulative tribe. It could be at work. It could be the organization. It could be the leader. It could be the boss, manager. It could be a coworker, right? It even could be, someone in your household, right? Anybody in your household. So that kind of manipulative behavior. So a good part of what I'm wanting to do this year is we have to heal, and healing looks differently to different people. And I'm going to talk about dreams and healing because I think is in some ways it's more socially acceptable to talk about our dreams and how anger in our own lives, when it's suppressed, this is how I interpret it, right? This is how I use this information. This year, these next 2 weeks, I'm really doing a scrubbing up of just like a teenager, setting aside everything anyone has ever really told you, things that you had to uphold to, and go in there and say, is this true for me? And as an individual that is a healer, I'm a teacher, I'm a parent mentor, I'm a sustainable living mentor, is the thing that's really important to me is that I own my inner authority. So what my inner authority looks like is benevolent, responsive, committed. I set high standards for myself, but I don't set or impose things on other people. I've learned through my own experiencing with parenting myself, through parenting 3 individuals in my house who are completely different. And we have always, we called them in and said, here's this place. And they've shown up, and I'm like, wow, we thought we knew the definition of independent thinking. And we're always redefining that every day. And really our goal, as my partner and I, have always been to create an environment in which our children can grow in, make their mistakes, learn from their strengths, learn from their mistakes in order to really gather themselves together to launch into the world, to be a free thinker, to be an independent thinker, to be a creative thinker, to have and set their own moral compass, ethical compass, to be able to be somebody. For me, is that because I came from an environment that was high control, and being an empath, I could absolutely, from a very young age, understand that people said one thing and did another, and I had to figure out how to keep myself safe. And I didn't always keep myself safe from harm. Again, if you stay to the end, I can talk about that a little bit, but you may not be interested in some of the story of it, or you may not be able to hear some of the story of it. I won't go into a lot of detail of it, but I do want to at least give you some things in case you're curious about what that is, because when you're hurt, there's an expression, hurt people hurt. And as a person who's been hurt and never wanted to hurt any other person, animal, anything, I hold myself highly accountable. I don't look at other people and hold them accountable. They will rise on their own. I believe that they will rise. I believe that they will learn from their own experiences. I believe that you can only learn from your own experiences. And again, coming here today, this is what it's about. If there's a chat comment at all, I don't see it yet. Anyway, so whoever is here, just really getting into laying the foundation. I'm at minute 11 minutes, so I'm going to go to the next one, and I'll talk more about dreams. But I'm just going to end on this little note, this kind of little note here that said, I felt in my own life that I've heard hurt people hurt, and it is true that generationally, within my own family, there has been generations of harm, which I probably wish I would have never known about that. But as a child, I was told about these things, and it's hard because, in a way of saying it, it was like, well, it happened to me, it happened to this person, and it happened to you, and I never thought it would. But at the end of the day, we didn't do anything to help protect you. We didn't do anything to remove the person who harmed you from the environment. We have led a life in which this other person, to a greater or lesser degree, has been welcomed and celebrated. And we had to tell stories about you because we couldn't let you tell your truth. We couldn't let you be who you are. And now that the majority of the next generation is an adult, I have just accepted that I've done what I can to reach out. And at the end of the day, we're all adults. And if they have to believe those stories that have been told and keep going on about me, that is what they need to believe. It doesn't mean that I don't love them, but it means that I am not going to be in a codependent relationship with them. I am not hiding things from them. And so today I just wanted to say, if you're someone like me, like, you deserve to be heard, you deserve to be held. I'm sorry if you have that kind of experience, but it's real. It's real and it's true, but it doesn't define you. And talking about dreams, I wanted to say that here's the thing, is that we can't suppress that kind of place. Like when that pain comes up, we hide it because as an empath or a highly sensitive person or adult children of an alcoholic or any kind of addiction or living in a cult or any other high control environments, we have been taught to shove the feelings, to not have the feelings. Many of these cultish type organizations, whether we've been told mantra to help move those emotions away or affirmations away or, pray the gay away, all that BS, it's like when you have been involved in it and you're sensitive, I don't believe, especially for me, my first instinct was not to hurt the other people, and they knew it. My instinct was to be who I am, but not to have to give away myself. So part of that journey meant sometimes I had a mentor, and my mentor was like, you are very angry and you just like are candy coating it. And I was like shocked. I'm like, that's not true. I'm like, I can be who I am. I tell my story. And they're like, no, there's this part of you that it was a really wonderful physical and energetic teacher as well. And I went, okay, I'm willing to give it a try. And so I was cussing. And when I started like cussing, not at people, here's the difference, not cussing at people, but just cussing to express emotion. That's the difference. I would define it. So when my children are like, oh, mom's cussing, of course they're cussing all the time, but they hear me cuss. I'm like, yeah, but here's the difference. I am not cussing at you, right? I'm not calling you names. I'm not directing it to you. I'm like, something happens to my foot. I'm like, oh, whatever expletive, that's different than being shouted at. So the highly controlled environments is they will get in your face and they will yell at you and they will call you names and they will demean you and they will bring stuff up, and it's all to make you smaller, make them bigger, to control you, and to make you feel bad for feeling the emotions that you're feeling. So I just want to say that. And this is a really tricky part, and not to judge people, not to judge yourself, not to judge others. I mean, it's tricky. And there's even a step that I would like to say, because I'm going to be going into this in the next 2 weeks, is that no one else has to understand what you're going through, only you. So when we come together as a group, and we come together in line, or we come together in person, and we come together in these other groups, this is one of the things I'm going to be teaching, is how to hold space, how to come together and still allow yourself to go through what you need to and not stifle other people. And what is that? I'm going to give a little bit more to that, because it seems like there's a little bit more here that I might want to go on. Hi, sweetie. Oh, my goodness. Hi, Marlena. Thank you so much for coming. So I'm glad you made it. Thank you. So what I want to say is, one of the things that comes up is, like, if you're in a group situation or you might be in a family, okay? So there is a time and place, and you want to create a time and place so where you can open yourself up, not unload on people. You still have to have your own sense of responsibility, but you have to be able to feel that there is a safe place, okay? And there has to be some agreements and some boundaries. And I know that sounds counterintuitive in some ways, but I am a facilitator, and I've worked with groups, I've worked with individuals, I've worked with different energy techniques, such as EFT, which is a really good one for the group dynamics. Also, kinesiology. I have a teacher, and I still have a mentor that helps me with this. So basically what we're saying is that you get into a place, maybe a healing circle or a talking circle. I started in a 12-step group. There's anonymity, right? And we don't talk about the things that leave this room, like what comes up in this room stays in this room. And you don't say things that you don't feel. Don't let other people pressure you into saying things. Don't let someone else say, hey, does that mean that you don't trust me, or I'm not a safe person because you're not feeling like you can open me up, you can open up into that? Now that person is really, it's about them and it's not about you. And really what a good thing to say is, someone can say whatever you want to say or not say, or we can even have silence here. But I want you to know that I'm here for you. And it's helpful if that person knows how to go into their heart. It's helpful if that person knows how to still their mind, to be like a beautiful ocean. It's helpful to go out and just walk in nature together. It's just honoring and supplying this space, because sometimes people do not feel safe in silence, right? The nervous system, when you're in fight, flight, freeze, fawning, we'll talk about these things too, but you probably know about fight or flight. You know what it feels like when it comes up. I'm going to have to get one of my dogs who's come down here. I'm busy. Lucy. And she's deaf. So, or she doesn't hear me. Lucy. All right, we'll see how she does. So that's what I want to say about having a space, creating a space, learning how to create a space. Like, that's, again, one of my focuses for this year in my business is creating opportunities for parents, healers, teachers, volunteers, where experience is your best teacher, right? Coming together in a group. How do we facilitate a group? How do we participate in a group? Some of it comes from nonviolent communication. Some of it comes from Mickey Cashtan, who is started with nonviolent facilitation and then developed her own mentoring. And I had been mentored by her in Chicago. And she does a lot of online mentoring still. So this is kind of where this comes from. And so really coming together so that you, again, we're talking about if you have been in a high control environment, or that you're healing from some kind of childhood wound, or you're trying to find who you are, and a part of that has been you have been told that you're not acceptable for how you are and who you are. My children, it was always a big thing with us to make sure they are who they are, and so having our children, some of our children, that LGBTQ community, it was like we didn't change anything in order to create a place for our children. We'd already created something so big and enormous that everybody got a chance to come in, and they got to inform us what things are helpful and what kinds of more things could we bring in. But even with that, I have to say that even my own experience as a parent, sometimes I will look at my children as they're moving into their teenage years, and they, even though we were there for them, like they had to go through that place where they reject us or push us away. I mean, that's a natural part. But 9 out of 10 friends that come to our house, their parents, at least maybe one, that's rare, but two parents accepting them and creating an environment where they get to thrive, where they get to bring in their friends, that's not happening. So we have, beautiful individuals coming to our house who are hurt, who don't feel safe. And when they come to me and they see me, it's like, I know that I'm not safe. They don't have a good relationship with their parents. They don't have a good relationship with family members. They don't have a good relationship with somebody who looks like me and talks like me and acts like me. And I have to really appreciate that. I have to love them from afar. I have to be respectful. I myself, I have, anxiety, and I would love to reach in and hug them. I would love to reach in and talk to them, but it has to be on their terms. And some of these are teenagers, some of these are young adults. And it's even after I've known them for a year, I'm still sensitive to that, right? Like, and I also have, I want them to feel comfortable in my house. So I had to kind of do a reset recently, even though I've known these beautiful people in my house for a year. Friends of my college age student have come in. I had to kind of be awkward and go like, hey, welcome to my home. And I'm a hugger. And I did it your way, but I want you to know I'm here for hugs. I want you to be here. I want you to ask questions. I want you to, whatever I can do for you, I'm here for that. And I'm sorry if I didn't say that sooner, but this is me trying to figure out what each person needs. And I need this. I need you to know. You don't have to do anything or change anything. And it was really sweet because there were some individuals who they remember that. So now when they come into the house, they hug me. When they come into the house, we might, chit chat a little bit. And I'm really excited about it. Sometimes when we go out and we do things together, they'll talk to me and include me. And it's really been a great, last couple of months since we opened this up. And I'll just say on the same thing that my husband and I have been being more active in his high school Pride Club. He's a new Pride member this year, or mentor this year. And so I got a chance to go and to meet and do a fundraiser with the kids a couple of weeks ago. And so we've, chit-chatting back and forth. And so for this next year, since he was new, he was kind of, seeing what the kids wanted to do and doing some fundraisers. And so now the kids are coming in to him and saying, hey, can you ask Lorelai, what about this and what about that? And so we're making more plans. And again, that was kind of a slow roll, but it was really, really exciting and really amazing to be a part of that. So I said I would talk about dreams, and I'm going to talk about suppressing anger. Okay. Suppressing anger, and not that it's a bad thing, because I want to say that it's not a matter of duality. It's not a matter of polarity. It's not a matter of, oh, this is good and this is bad. It's not a matter of this water is really, really hot, and this water, I have to figure out which way I'm moving. This water is really, really cold. Okay. So I did a deep dive in energetics, and especially things like the Tao Te Ching, Taoism, Buddhism, and all different aspects of health, wellness, and cooking in the last 20 years I've been going down this rabbit hole. And part of that was stimulated because the people in my household have different sensitivities. They have texture sensitivities, smell sensitivities, taste sensitivities. They have, some things where their brain just automatically strongly rejects things, and so it causes this fight within them, and not against us, but having to be a parent and learning how to work with kids that have these things that are learning about themselves. But now if we looked at the surface, it looks like, oh, this person isn't willing to try new things. Oh, this person isn't willing to accept something that I've given them, not understanding that, I had to I paid money to buy this thing for them, and now they don't want it. One of my kids, and I try to lump them together. So I'm not just going to tell you about one, because I do try to. It's kind of a quandary for me as a mom, because it is my experience, and I do like to be open and help to share things. But at the same time, I'm also true to my kids in saying they get to tell their story. So I can only tell you, and I'm sure you understand this, that I can tell you from my parenting perspective, and that I get to make mistakes, and I get to be wrong. But there are just some core things that my partner and I have done that were just very beneficial, and we were just things that we could stand by them. So when we talk about dreams and we talk about not being able to fully express things, it's very interesting that in the dream time, in my own dreams, I would see myself kicking things or throwing things, or I'd be like, I'll use my partner, my husband. I remember a few years ago, I was like, I was so mad at you. You were in my dream and you were acting like a jerk. And I stood up to you and I told you and blah, 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 blah. And he would just look at me and go like, wow, this dream husband of yours, can we divorce him? And he would always get a big kick out of it. But I was grateful that he allowed me the space to be able to tell him and really lean into the emotion, even if that emotion was like laughter and curiosity and maybe felt a little bit of an embarrassment. It helped me connect with that, whatever that was that stimulated my dream to be so angry and so upset, because it was totally out of character. Now, one thing that does come up to talk about is boundaries, but I don't want to open up too many files. So just know that we do have to do a dive into boundaries, because we need to talk about it. We need to have some be kind of in the same kind of space about boundaries in a bit, and Lucy, and be able to talk about them. I think I have to go get my dog. Hold on a second. Lucy, come here, Lucy. Oh my goodness. So here's a boundary. Lucy gets to sit with me for a minute. She's like, what? I know. So she came down the stairs, which she doesn't normally do. And so the boundary is she's supposed to be upstairs. So she knows she's not supposed to be down here. But she came down here, and I said, it was like a kid. I was busy. I was giving her some verbal, hey, Lucy, stop. And she wouldn't. So then she went into my kiddo's room, which who knows what's on the floor there, right? And so she danced around the boundary, which is like a fabric door. And then she went into it. So she knew. So she crossed that line. So I'm good about that, setting boundaries and that kind of thing. And the biggest boundary is you have to be healthy for yourself, and not do anything that's going to cause yourself harm or cause yourself a deficit. And again, it can be tricky, how you communicate that to someone else. But I think at the end of the day, again, we're talking about individuals like myself, like you, who we haven't had that safe place. We haven't been able to operate from a place of, it's okay to take care of myself. It's not okay I can't be honest with my husband. Okay, I'm going to go set her down. Hold on a second. Okay, you go upstairs, please. Okay, go. 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 Okay, there she goes. So, oh yeah, like in my own house, we really value, everybody getting what they need, and we value people asking for what they need and advocating for what they need. And in our house, we understand the value of good health up front. We understand the value of when you feel like you're starting to come down. We have herbs, we have drinks, we have things that we eliminate like sugar, fried foods. I mean, anything you probably really should be eating anyway. Like that's the first thing. So we really appreciate in the family. Like that is kind of like someone says they're not feeling good. Well, I don't lump stuff on them. It's like, well, how do you feel and what can we do about it? So again, I'm going to say the dreams. So there's dreams. You might have angry dreams. You can have a dream where you actually do things like using a knife to cut things, or you could be using a gun in dream time. It could be a fire. And it really depends upon what else is going on in the dream. And what are the cues. Now, this particular video, I'm not going to, although people may add the comments, which is totally fine. But I'm not going to give you the answers other systems for dreams have set up, because my really goal right now in talking about dreams is dreams and self-reflection. Okay. So like I'll just say this. So for the majority of my life, I had dreams as a kid. All right. And I had a lot of dreams that were like nightmarish type dreams. My parents, like most parents, they did not have any kind of background or interest in dream interpretation. And so they weren't able to help me. And I know that sometimes it was really hard when I had nightmares and I was really young, but I really didn't have anyone to go to, which was kind of good because, it just means that innocence as a child, like I got to dream and think about my dreams. And I never picked up a book to try to find out what my dreams meant, right? Like, yes, it might be frustrating, but at the end of the day, I did learn things about myself. I did get feedback from my environment. There were things that happened in my dreams that I remembered and helped me during the day. So it's natural and it's organic. And this is what I want to get back to. I've had decades and decades of 3 different methods of dream interpretation and studied them and mastered them to a great degree. And even with that, I'm still was like, there was this idea that was kind of birthed in me a few years ago. I'm like, what if I had chosen a different path? What if I'd never gone to an outside person to learn about dreams? Now, I'm going to tell you what happened was, when I learned about dreams the first time, I was in my early 20s, and it was like very authoritative, right? I know what the dreams mean. Here's a book that our organization has written. Here's absolutely everything. And of course, not everything is in there. And so it was very authoritative. Here's the book, read it, study it. This is it. There was, once you learn the symbols, then there did come the application of it and the living of it, which I think is amazing and awesome, which is something I carried with me, meaning if I go learn something, then I'm going to learn it enough that I be able to incorporate it. And then when I incorporate it, I get to put my own ideas into it. Okay. So I've done that 3 times. And there's this part of me that keeps saying, now, if I'm like teaching my children, my children don't know the symbols of dreams. When they were young, I was in a different mindset and I was giving them some of the symbols and teaching with some of the symbols. But when my oldest became a teenager, I really switched gears, because with them, I really had to say, like, someone's telling me a dream. In the olden days, it would have been like, oh, you're telling me your dream. So I know how to interpret dreams. I must interpret them. Oh, they're back again. It's the kitten and the small dog, Lucy. They're back. So see those boundaries. This time I looked at her and sent her back up. So because I get to incorporate it, I get to apply it. I really like that part of it. But going back, what if I'd never gone to someone else who then was telling me what my dreams meant? And I'll say that when they did that, it was like, don't listen to anyone else. Don't listen to yourself. You don't get to just make up what dream symbols mean. It's a universal, everyone, everywhere, no matter what language they speak, this is it. And I was like, okay. So that's a hierarchy of thinking for sure. That's an authority structure. It's kind of like the guru disciple structure. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have its place, but what if I'd never come into that? What if I lived in the woods and I lived on my farm and I never came in contact with someone that said, pay me and I'll tell you what your dreams mean? But I signed up for it and I saw the value in it and I taught to many people and I had my own experiences with it and I still do. It's much like healing as well. So I think that when like me and I know you probably like me, I was connected to nature. I lived in the foothills of the mountains. I got to go hiking and biking. I lived close to lakes and the ocean, all these different natural environments. Wherever you've lived in the world, there's some kind of nature. You can go find some kind of nature. And so I was always surrounded by nature. I was always going out in nature and doing things. I was always hiking and biking. I was always outside swimming. And I always had my animals, whether they were with me or animals that we noticed that were out in the woods or whatever. So like that to me was healing. Like as a young child, I had a lot of things going on in my life, but that was the one like kind of path and consistency. And it was only really when I came into my early 20s that I then began running into, I say now, boom, into walls where there's a very highly authoritative structure. And what I would say now, and again, especially as a parent, and especially observing things that have been going on and observing different groups and participating at different levels, is there is this time of moving from the teenage years where you should be allowed to experiment. You should be allowed to have your own ideas. We kind of like where I live, and I hope where you live is different, but what my kids have been exposed to is a very rigid thinking. It's a very narrow band. We're fortunate that we do have a lot of acceptance and diversity, that we live in a fairly urban area. So we have that. And so people are supporting each other. However, there is a particular predominant religion, there's particular predominant beliefs, and these beliefs are not accepting and loving and supporting and celebrating us. So it's almost like they tolerate us and our families, but they really would rather we weren't here. And that's not just religious, it's many different ways. But this is where our children are. And so my children have learned about through the diversity and through this adversity to be resilient. They've always been the kind of people that stand up for others. But they know why now. And it's not because I told them that they had to. It's because they saw something and they said something and they did something and they figured out that empowered them. So it's always my goal and my intention for them to lean into their own authority, right? So as a parent, again, it's some people, adults didn't get these steps, or in high control environments, you were highly controlled. Even a military environment, you think of military, right? You might think, oh, they're going to learn discipline and they're going to learn orderliness and all the things that you think of in this very mechanistic military type environment. But what happens is when individuals leave that environment that was all laid out for them, at the end of the day, it was really about obeying orders. It was about suppressing what you might naturally think, whether it was for the greater good or whether it was not to get punished or, so you could have more authority later on, whatever the reason was. It wasn't self-will. It wasn't self-discipline. It wasn't developing reasoning. It wasn't learning from your mistakes. It was being afraid of being punished more than it was self-examination and creativity and reimagining the answers to things, right? So again, any kind of military, any kind of controlled set environment. I even know an individual that their parents, they had asked for counseling and their parents said no. And it was very clear to us that that person in their family would benefit from counseling. And the bottom line, if they're being truthful, is that they didn't want anyone else to know what was going on in their family. And then so they kept mental health services from someone who really needed it and was coming into our environment, kind of dumping on our family, and then going home. And my family, being a family of empaths, being really considerate people, they had to learn that opportunity of saying, I care about you, and I'm sorry that that person isn't helping you with this, but I have to say, I can't hold all this stuff. I'm not a professional. This, I care. Now you've given me all your emotional angst and all your upsets. I can do nothing about it. But now as an empath, here I am eating it. Here I am feeling down. Here I am getting sick because I'm taking this on. And so again, as a parent, it's you have to trust your kids. You have to love your kids, and you have to be like, am I being a good example for them? Am I being a good example for them? How I process my emotions, I have my feelings. Am I being a good example for them as they got older, saying things like, was really important to me. It was always really important to me to be able to be open with my kids. And I really am the same way, right? But I know that sometimes in our innocence, whether it's a child being innocent or a person being innocent, you might say, oh, what's going on with that? Or I see this is going on, or you're upset. And that person may be really, really struggling. But let's say you're at work. Let's say you have to drive your car. Let's say you have to go, like this happened to me pretty recently in the last couple of months. Like somebody dumped something on me, a professional actually, and then like turned me around and it's like, okay, and there's your child. And I was very upset with them. And I said to them, this is very unfair that you did this, and advocating for myself with this professional. And I said, I have to go face my empathic teenager who, you don't have to be an empath to see what you just said to me. I'm clearly shaken. And it was a doozy. And it wasn't about them. It was about me. And it was something that was really had to make sure that we go down this rabbit hole, so to speak. But I said, that's not fair. And I need some space. Like I need to step away from you for a minute, but I need some space to clear my own, I'll say energy, to clear my mind, to clear my heart, because I do not want my teenager to put any kind of connection with the way that I'm feeling, since I just talked to someone who's related to them, that they may have caused me harm in any way, shape, or form when they have the opportunity to talk about themselves, because they need that sacred space. They need that silence place. But here this professional is willing to dump this stuff on me, and knowing me a little bit and knowing that I have anxiety, and put me in this particular spot. I was very, very angry about it. But you know what? I never turned that anger on myself. And I was really proud of myself. Like I could sit there, I could understand that anger. I could be mad at that person for placing us both in this situation. I could say to them, it's not fair that you just created this situation. But once I said that, then I was like, okay, I'm done with that person, because whatever they have to deal with, that's on them. And I'm good with being able to speak the way I spoke. I didn't yell at them, but what if I did? I'm falling apart. They just said something in their professional opinion. There were some check boxes, some things that were missed that they did not come across. But it wasn't for me to clean that up. It wasn't for me to make nice. It wasn't for me to pretend like, oh, I have this all together. It's not a big deal. It was real. It was raw, and I was experiencing it. And because of that, I moved through it pretty quickly. Yeah, it's a lot. Like you have to take the time to process things. So this is like, again, self-reflection, self-referring when it comes to dreams. Like, I encourage you to take your dreams and let yourself embrace them, no matter what is going on in the dream. No matter it's a wonderful dream about driving in the forest and it's a beautiful sunrise or a sunset and there's beautiful animals, or some of these really lovely dreams are we're at the beach. I love those dreams. We're at a party celebrating. It's great. But the dark ones, the ones that are scary, the ones we're driving our car, is not to be afraid of those. And if we can start by paying attention to those and talking about those things happening in our dreams, then that kind of moves over into understanding more of what's going on in our daily life. And that there can be this greater connection within ourselves for what's going on in our life and what's going on in our inner life or in our dream life, even to the point of why we may or may not be asking or remembering our dreams. And at the end of the day, even not remembering your dreams is perfectly okay too. Or you may not think that you remember your dreams. So then we kind of switch gears, and there's other things that you could work with. If you're not remembering your dreams and you want to, there comes a point in time in which you have to set that aside and switch gears. You have to say, well, what can I do? Like, is there art that I feel? Is there music? Is there poetry? Do I need to be more creative and create these things together for myself? Then that it's important to do that. When I learned dream interpretation, was not in a place where people gave me alternatives. It was very like, you will do this and you will do it in this particular way. And what I found is that it didn't always work for me. And when I was able to teach, I was told, oh, you have to teach it this way. You can't change anything. Well, I didn't change anything, but I can certainly encourage my students to do things. I can certainly encourage them to be more gentle with themselves. I could certainly encourage them to honor there's resistance coming up, and not to continue to be mad at themselves or bring more heat, which only brings on more resistance as well. So that would be my first step. Is I would say, I would definitely encourage you to make the commitment to set aside any books, anything that other people have said, and because you're the authority. And that's what I want for you this year. And I hope that you want it for you this year, because it's something that I have always wanted for me. And I continue to move this along, is that to be my own inner authority, to be my own hierarchy. Now, some of the things you might notice if you're in an environment where other people are not leaning into their authority, okay? Meaning that they quote other people as the authority, they quote what the rules are, they want to hold you accountable, but probably not holding themselves accountable, right? Do what I say, not as I do. People who are willing to say your dream is never going to come true. It's because they're those kinds of conversations, those kinds of beliefs come from trying to hold you back because they can't see that for themselves. And so there's this kind of synchronicity for them in a way that they can keep you in a place so you don't go after yours, so that it doesn't remind them to go after theirs. Or that if you really did get something, and they had put their life on hold and not gone after it, they would have to face themselves, right? So it's this external control, internal control. If I can't control myself, then I'm going to try to control my environment, right? And so when you show up and you know that, it's much easier to handle someone who might be a coworker, they might be your manager, somebody you report to, it might be somebody you work with, it might be a client, it might be, a family member. So it's a good way to just kind of have some idea of how to look behind the scenes, not just stay on the surface. Highly controlled environment is what I've seen is most of it is you have to stay on the surface. You have to follow the rules. You can't ask the why behind the rules. And again, being your own authority is knowing why you do what you do. Why, I'm going to say some things like, why did you vote for who you voted for? I honestly don't care who you voted for. I'm more interested in why you voted for who you voted. because our way forward is for us to come together, that's going to create something that's going to be beneficial for all of us. And if we're all looking at what's going to be beneficial for all of us, then that goes beyond some of our belief systems. It goes beyond the solutions that we have here at hand. When we're looking for a solution that includes everybody, then we win, right? And when I say a solution that includes everybody, it reminds me of one of my mentors. And one of the things that she says is that, when I say everybody, I know, right away things come up like, oh, well, I'm not going to include this person who caused harm to that person. And why would I include this person and that person? And, I absolutely understand that. And when I say that includes everybody, the one thing that my mentor says, like, okay, it exists in the world. In the physical world, there's form, there's limitation that absolutely exists. And so we have to take a step and define, who are we and what are we doing? And not let that person doesn't deserve it, because that's basically what you're saying. Well, there are some people in this world that don't deserve it. All right, well, we're not going to debate about that, but we are going to say, like, okay, like for me, I really have made a concerted effort to grow naturally and to help other people who are interested in doing that. I'm learning about seed cultivation. This is a third year in which we've collected seeds, and it's not a huge amount of seeds that we've collected, but we have, 5 times more seeds this year than we did last year. And I'm going to keep track to see how many people we're going to be able to plant and create and eat, because mine are mostly vegetables or herbs, what they can produce. It's a small scale, but it's a start. I didn't say, well, my neighbors aren't doing it, so I'm not going to do it. No one else in my neighborhood is doing it, so I think I won't do it. It's like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see what it takes to do it. And along the way, I have the confidence that I'm going to be in places and conversations with people, and I'm going to meet other people who are interested in this. I won't have to talk them into it. All I have to do what I need to do, and they may ask questions or may come in as a client who wants to be mentored in one particular area or another, but I'm going to do it because I enjoy doing it. It's the right thing to do, and that is sustainable, right? So it's like the opposite of a hierarchy. If someone tells you what to do and how to do it, is you get to figure out how to do it. You figure out what you need to be supported, and you start by doing that. And what happens is it feeds itself. You get the satisfaction yourself. So we're talking about hierarchy and other people. You probably start to notice it. And this is something that you can start to write down. You might start to notice where people are trying to impose their will on you, which again comes back and it affects how you make your choices. It's shocking. It is really shocking, because to whatever degree you, your family, your loved ones, people you work with, like all the people who watch the news and programs, things they're interested and not interested, those are so accessible to us. We just don't even have a clue. Focusing and teaching, like, again, going back to my dream class, some things that were helpful, and I'm going to incorporate into this next couple of weeks foundation, is also concentration and focus, and how important that is. And especially if you yourself or someone else or a family member, or really everybody can benefit from this, is neurodivergent. It has a different kind of a sensitivity. It doesn't even have to be diagnosed. It doesn't have to raise the bar to the point of affecting the way we live our life, but it might. In my house, it does. And so my husband and I, it's like, you can't just okay, my Wi-Fi is going in and out. You can't just set a menu. And we know that. We know that about the kids. I think that I have like about 6 minutes here towards the end. I didn't want to go past this. So I hope I talked enough about dreams. I hope that you will ask me some about dreams. I hope that you'll write some comments because I will come back and I do some of the other formats I'll do is I will gather questions and answer them. But I want to tell you just a little bit of, I wanted to come in and just say about me and about being in a high control environment and how this specifically came up as I was thinking about doing this video. Like I said, I wanted to learn about dreams. I'd had a lot of dreams. I had dreams where I had deer were in my dream and they were dying, and it was really troubling me. I really, really hated having those dreams. I woke up really depleted and really sad because there wasn't anything, and it wasn't anything I could do. I didn't hit them or anything, but they were on my road in the wilderness. There's a path, and they were dying. Their energy was waning, and they were like dying. Like I don't know why. So then my one of my relatives suggested that I go to a place where they had dreams, and I really wanted to learn about dreams, but they didn't just teach about dreams. Where I was at, it was like uh, a whole educational system, like something I'd never seen before. But basically, there were 3 levels to it. There was a first 24 lessons, and then I forget what the other ones are, but I think there was about like 40 lessons, 45 lessons, and then 15 lessons. So there's a three tiers, right? And you didn't have a chance to come in and learn about dreams. It wasn't like you could have a weekly class on dreams. That didn't happen. It's like if you wanted to learn about dreams, which is all I really wanted to learn about, you had to learn about things benefited me, but again, they weren't always things I wanted to learn about. So one of the things that was we had to study the Bible as a holy scripture. Now later on, after the first 24 lessons, which is like a long time because it's more than 24 weeks, you do go into other holy scripture, which I did go into that. I went up to the first 40 lessons. So if I dedicated myself to the first 40 lessons, there was a huge reason why I did, being so close to the end, that I did, even though I'd stayed, I'd put myself through so much torture. I'd put up with so much baloney. I'd been lied to. I'd been all kinds of stuff. And I just wanted to get to the end so that I could finish what I came to finish and walk away myself. But that just was not possible in that circumstance. But the first 24 lessons, they covered things like focus and concentration, studying the Bible. You were doing reading a lesson every day. You were doing a 10-minute concentration exercise, which started with the candle exercise. Pretty early on, you learned about after week 5, where you'd been concentrating and focusing and remembering your dreams. You were introduced to Kundalini and healing projections. You were introduced to a different kind of healing that I'd never been in and never heard about. But this was like mental, emotional, physical healing. And it began to introduce the idea that thought is cause, and that your emotions and your thoughts together either create health or weigh your body down, where disease may take hold. All this was very new to me anyway. And there was another thing that I had to learn and read about, which at the time was something that I vehemently didn't want to do, but because it was part of the curriculum I did, which is about reincarnation. It's something that truly scared me. We actually had to have a past life reading. You didn't have a choice. You couldn't continue past lesson 8 if you didn't. I mean, by that time I'd gone down this like rabbit hole of like using the information. My focus was returning. I was remembering my dreams. There were some things that I'd wanted to do that I'd had the opportunity to do and be a part of a community. And I really enjoyed the books. I enjoyed the teacher that I eventually had. I enjoyed the community. Pretty quickly, I moved into a place of teaching the lessons. I moved into living in the school environment. I rented a room. But when you rent a room, you're 100%, 24 hours a day involved in that school, what you're doing for that school. At least that was the scenario that I had. And again, I was 25 years old. I put myself through college. This is some of the other things that had happened is I was like this train. Once I had gone from, I realized through counseling and I realized through 12-step groups that I had to move away from this environment that I was in where there was an active alcoholic and that it wasn't healthy for me. And the healthier that I got, the more pulling and the more antagonistic that environment became. And my counselor had told me, you need to leave. Like, you are really good. You have a really strong mind. You have some really good ideas. I mean, the only thing you need to do is that I know that, you're going to college and you're paying for your own college and all that, but it's like, you've got to move out. That it would be more healthy for you to move out and figure out how to make your finances work than it would for you to stay in the environment you're in. And as hard as that was, I remember there was one night that I had to approach somebody who had had a DUI and who had been drinking and came home. And I had to say to them, I care about you. I love you. I'm concerned about you. What are you doing? Like, I don't want you to hurt yourself. I don't want you to hurt someone else. And they said, this is none of your effing business. You just mind your own effing business. This is, of course, what someone's going to say. And I remember that day that I went, I cannot be here. I'm really grateful to myself to have the courage to stand up, and to say that. And I was alone in that. No one was standing up for me in that. And it was like, I'd had enough. I'd been in other situations within those areas in my life where I'd been hurt, I'd been used, I'd been manipulated, and I'd been abused. And that everyone in that household, everyone in that environment continued to say, well, guess what? You get to stay. And guess what? We're not going to support you. And we're going to hide this because it's easier for us to hide this than for other people, for us to get behind you and do what you need to do. Like, we don't have your back. We have nothing. I was, again, really shocked. And I guess sometimes I say, like, my innocence and my naivete was like, I have no one. I have nothing. There is nothing to do. But when you go through kind of an abusive, manipulated situation for so long, and especially when it's emotional and mental, you do find the strength. And that's what I want to say. Like, you do find the strength. You do find the strength to go on, and you get to reclaim your life, and you get to renegotiate. And no one can tell you what to do about that. No one can tell you to stay. No one can tell you to go. There are times in which I have left for long periods of time, and I at that period of time I moved. I moved out of state. That was the first time I said, I got to move. I got to get out of state because I have to do. One thing I have to do is physically separate myself from this situation, because that is truly the only place I'm going to get peace. The only place I'm going to be able to call the shots myself. So this is kind of what happened, and kind of how I went from one high control group to another, where I have all this control going on in this one group, and me just doing the very best that I could. Working 3 jobs because I had to go find a place to live, and I only had a high school education. So I was working 3 jobs in order to support myself. I also was able to work in a job that I didn't love, but I had to pick a curriculum, marketing, which they would pay for, which they did. So I was able to kind of garner these things together. I figured out, once I got out there and once I did these things for me, that it's better to be healthy than it is to be beholden to other people. That I was happy. I was happy living on ramen. This is the time we had to wear nylons to work. I'm dating myself a little bit here. You would, $1 nylons, but I was happy. I was happy. I was working 3 jobs. I was happy because I was able to do this. I was happy because I had my independence and it felt really good. And I knew I was working for things. I always wanted my college education. It took me a little more than 5 years to finally get my, bachelor's in marketing, but I did. And what was maybe not the degree that I would have wanted to get if I had been given a chance to. I tried to kind of get a teaching degree, but I couldn't figure out how to do. At the time, you still do. You have to work. and you have to work at a school, and I would have to like work at a school and then go and work at night and then show up for work the next day at the school. And I just didn't see how I was going to be able to do that. I didn't see how that was going to be able to put my best foot forward. So I was really never able to do that. But I did put myself through massage school. That was another thing I wanted to do, and something I hadn't been able to do when I was in the high control environment. Because when I got into this high control environment, the class, which led to teaching, which led to living in the school, which led to directing the school. And I just like went full in, full on. I gave it my all to this high control environment. And there's so much of it I loved, but the deeper I got into it, the more the reality of how manipulative it was and how controlling it was and how I was being lied to, it just got worse and worse. And things started happening, and I was like, I couldn't tell anybody about it, because then you get to I'll just say the environment that I was in, that first 24 lessons are beautiful. All right, just like anything. So there isn't a lot people who go through those first 24 lessons and probably didn't do the lesson or didn't have this experience in the same way that I did, have a completely different experience. And the people that I was with, the people that I know to some degree, they're still afraid of talking about the experiences they had. They don't want to think about it. They want to leave it behind. But when the little bits that I hear, it's like much like my own story. Like no one ever really knows my full story either, because I was made to feel afraid of it. Much like the environment where there was addiction and there was abuse and all that going on, right? It was like, we're not going to tell anybody. You can't say anything. We have to look like we're perfect on the outside. So then here I am, put myself through college, and then I get into this other environment, and lo and behold, it's the same kind of tactics, the same kind of people. It's very much a hierarchy. It was, I was like, now as an adult and going back, and that was many years ago, I can see how my own narcissistic, controlling environment set me up to go into this other high control environment, and how I fit into it. And I do remember one day when I was probably beginning to try to figure out what's my escape plan going to be, because I really tried. I really did everything that I was asked to do. I just gave it everything and all. And the more that I got involved and the more that I did, the more that I uncovered, the more that I saw manipulation and just purely lying to me. And at this point in time, I couldn't face them and say, look, this is a lie. Like I knew when someone lied to me, and it took me a while to believe it. I did not believe it. And my parents tried to tell me that I was being controlled. And of course, that wasn't great either. But when I saw it for myself, and it got to a critical point where I said, I just want to get through it. I have to put up with all this that's going on. Can I make it? Can I get through it? And the answer was no. At the end of the day, I said, I can't give up myself anymore. I was also having to then teach people and invite people in. And my students had already been trying to get me to leave the organization for many years. And I really loved them, and I really supported them. And I could see that they were doing what they needed to do. When people were getting ready to leave, you were supposed to say things that would make them want to come back. You were supposed to tell them that they weren't done yet. You were supposed to give them a carrot, right? You were supposed to manipulate them. And I was never willing to manipulate them. I was never willing to say, oh, wow, it was really hard to come back. I'll say, like, I remember this one particular individual, and I know she tried really hard, and she saw what's going on in a lot of ways. And I never crossed that boundary of being like, it's kind of like being a teacher student. It's like being a manager and an employee. Like there's this line, and I never crossed that with my students. I did not cross it with her. It was hard because she knew that I couldn't tell her everything that's going on, but she saw me often enough, and she helped out of in this environment enough that she could see. It was on my face. It was there, but I could not, or I would not, what we consider dump on her. And when she made the choices she did, I listened, and I said, this is great for you. And if anyone in that organization would have heard me or would have known that I was encouraging in any way, shape, or form, I would have gotten in a lot of trouble. I would have really, really gotten into trouble. But I did what I knew was best for them. I knew what they had decided to do, and they came to me because they wanted closure, because they didn't need me to tell them that they were going to leave, but I wanted to be there and to listen to them and just be as whatever I could be for them, that I was no longer someone who was trying to manipulate them. And I stood my ground with that. Once I started standing my ground with that, I realized that I was no longer willing to be like the bridge between reality, which was horrible, and the illusion. Like I no longer could stand there and walk in those two places. I don't I at the time I don't know that that kind of manipulation goes on. I know there's a lot of things that have changed. Okay. So but it does help me relate to other people. It does help me relate to, unfortunately, there are other high control environments. There are other cults that there's so many similar things. And because they are talking about what happened to them and that there are still children that are being hurt, like that I learned about this in the last 6 months, because one of the things that I've always worked on is making sure that this is a safe place for children. And this is a safe place on earth for our inner children, whether that's part of a peace project, because to me, yeah, war is, I grew up, I grew up in the 70s, and it was at the end of the Vietnam War. And that's the kind of world I came into, was a huge world, was a world at war. And there's no winners in that. And this is not a political statement in any way, shape, or form. It's like looking at a world, looking at a place and saying, I'm here, and whatever I can contribute to make sure that this place is safe for children, because it was not safe for children. I wasn't a safe child. Then that's important to me. So I can connect with other people. I see that, and I want to do something about it. And this year is about reclaiming our power. It is about reclaiming our inner authority. All right. So you can call it narcissist, high control behavior. You can call gaslighting, all kinds of names and terms. And I'm really grateful that people have broken these things down and talked about it, because we never did before. But I would also like to talk about them in a way in which we can learn how to be our own inner authority, and also how to be in a space where we realize not everybody feels the same, but yet we can still work towards the ideal. And it helps to talk about that in smaller groups and in private settings where you can feel safe, and when you can say things like, I know it's been a healing process for me too, learning how to facilitate and learning about community. And one of the first things within those communities we do is we come together and say, what are some personal biases that we have? What do we think about some of the ways that we've approached some things that have been conflicting? Like, some of the things I'll do is talk about hot button items. Like, the first thing is, let's talk about this, and then let's talk about how we listen to each other and creating a space. And sometimes people don't want to be a part of that. But what's important to me, and I'm going to leave it with this, I think what's important to me is, especially if I'm online or I'm in a group, I'm showing up for something, and somebody says, this is the way that it is, and they don't leave room for anyone else. I notice it, and then I'll be with that person again, and I'll notice that person will come around again, and this person will then state a personal bias. That's what I'm going to call it. I have personal bias, you have personal bias. I walk the thin line between medicine and allopathic medicine, Eastern medicine, just natural, taking care of yourself. So I lean towards, I wasn't grown up this way. I grew up with allopathic medicine, pharmaceuticals. But when I was about 25, I did meet people who who grew up on the land. They knew about herbs, herbology. I worked for a natural vitamin and supplement and herbal company. So I got, excuse me, a lot of education and learned how to live that way. I did that with my children. My children actually had a lot of skin sensitivities. Is how I learned propylene glycol as an active ingredient that may even still be in diapers. And my oldest was allergic to it. I'm like, how can my oldest be allergic to diapers? We did, and my oldest too is like, we started with the cloth diapers, and sometimes we had to use these other types of diapers, and we couldn't because they were allergic. They don't have a huge amount of allergies, but this is how a lot of people come in to learn about preservatives and chemicals. Talcum powder, we never used talcum powder. I'm really grateful to the individuals who came in and were like, oh my gosh, you're newbies. Let me just pile all the stuff on you. And I'm like, okay, and they were right. Years and years later, they're right. Baby powder. Have you seen the ads? So that's what I've leaned into. We've leaned into essential oils and herbs and taking care of ourselves. And that's a commitment. That's something you do every day, right? You have to do it every day. And it is true. The more that you live in a body, the more that you have been here, you have to refortify yourself, and you have to give it a little more TLC, and you have to give it a little more strength, and you have to give it the kind of nudging and exercise. You can't just be like a rock and remain in place. You know what happens to a rock? It's all flat on the bottom and it gets all distorted, right? Like you got to take care of yourself. So that's where I came from, and natural medicine, and my kids never needed antibiotics. It's not that I was anti-antibiotic. I think one kid one time had antibiotics, and that was it. I don't mess around with the thing that I never messed around with, especially if it came to like an eye infection. I took them for their regular checkups. I could go down the rabbit hole of all the different things that I did, but every step of the way, my husband was there, and he had a different point of view of things, and he didn't have the background that I did, and he watched and he saw that people healed, and he saw that people got better. And some of the things that I did too with my children is, I would say, like, again, that healing, even if I didn't have a particular method, I healed them with love, right? And that's one of the things that I did, is I opened my heart, and we would put on a Band-Aid, an essential, like a tea tree oil, and then I would put my hands on it, and I was like, just hold it, and they would be like, that just feels so good, Mom. And one of I'll just say this, my oldest one did call me out. They were like, I was taking care of their brothers, and I was like, and they were like, I need something. We put slapped a Band-Aid on it, sent them on their way. And they're like, you didn't put love in it, Mom. And I was like, oh, they do care. And it does make a difference. So I'm like, you're right. And so I took a breath, just calm myself down here, and went, okay, this is what we need to do. So it was really wonderful. So anyway, I hope that I gave you some things to think about, and some things for us to explore again in the coming weeks. I will come back to this, and I'm really glad that you're here. I love you, and be well, and I want for you what you want for you.